Hey there, I'm Rabbi Nathan, and welcome to Jewish Future Law, the series where we explore questions about emergent technologies and their impact on Jewish law, practice, and ethics. In this episode, can a robot convert to Judaism? Imagine this scenario. A robot walks into the rabbi's office and tells him that he wants to be counted in the minyan. What should the rabbi say? This exact question was posed to Rabbi Mark Goldfeder in a recent interview. Rabbi Goldfeder discussed all of the most important issues and questions relating to how the rabbi should appropriately answer this question. Ultimately, he gave the controversial answer, quote, "If I see something that for all intents and purposes looks human, I cannot start poking it to see if it bleeds. I have a responsibility to treat all that seem human as humans, and it is better to err on the side of caution from an ethical perspective." This statement ended up causing some controversy in the Orthodox community that's concerned with these types of questions. Another rabbi, Moshe Taub, responded in writing, quote, "Would Rabbi Goldfeder say that turning such a robot off would be tantamount to killing? That would give a whole new meaning to pulling the plug." He goes on to speculate about such a robot, wondering if you loaded in the entire Torah, the Talmud, all of the discussions of the rabbis, would that robot then essentially become like a rabbi himself? There's a story in the Talmud of a rabbi who creates an artificial automaton, a golem. It's not quite the same as a robot, but it's astonishingly close. And it can tell us a little bit about how the ancient Jewish tradition understood the role of an artificial human. The story goes like this. There was a rabbi who was known by the name Rava, and he was a master of mysticism. He used the mystical arts rather than technology to create an artificial human, an automaton, a robot. Rava sent the golem to his friend Rabbi Zarin, and Rabbi Zarin started talking to the golem, believing that it was an ordinary human being. However, when the golem couldn't reply, Rabbi Zarin knew that he was artificial. He didn't possess the intelligence or the cognition that defines human beings. He turned to the golem and he said, "You must have been created by one of our mystics. Return now to the dust you were made from." And with that, the golem disintegrated and died. Rabbis after the Talmud spent a lot of time discussing this anecdote and trying to understand exactly what it wanted to teach us. What right does a rabbi, even a great one, have to destroy a living creature on a whim? After a lot of discussion, the rabbis came to the understanding that the golem was not considered human or even alive. They understood that Rabbi Zarin was not killing anything, but was simply dismantling an object. It was not a true human being that he encountered, but rather an android. At this point, it might make sense to talk a little bit about some of the terminology that we take for granted today. The word robot originally comes from a play by a Czech playwright named Karel Čapek. In fact, the word robot comes from the Czech word robota, meaning forced laborer. In this science fiction play, human beings create artificial robots that look and act just like human beings. Finally, the robots have an uprising of their own. Today, we use the term robot to refer to any piece of technology that can automatically perform a task normally done by a person. It can refer to a physical machine or a piece of software. On the other hand, an android comes from the Greek word andros, meaning man, and the English suffix oid, meaning resembling in form. So an android is simply a robot that resembles a human being. A golem is a robot and an android, although it's created with mysticism rather than technology. The ethical lesson that we take away from the story in the Talmud is that even though the golem looks like a person, and on first observation might seem to act like a person, it cannot communicate or speak intelligibly, and therefore it's not a person. But what if we built a better android? What would it take for an android to be considered human? At the very least, it would have to possess human intelligence. It would have to be human enough in appearance to be able to fool other people. It would have to have some form of free will, a defining characteristic of human beings. Finally, it would need to have a soul. Rabbi Moshe Cordovero in the 16th century talks about this Talmudic story. The conclusion that he comes to is that Rabbi Zarin is allowed to destroy the golem because it possesses neither ruach, nefesh, or neshama, any of the three parts of a human soul. You can think of them as three layers that build on top of one another. At the very base you have the nefesh, the breath of life, the breath of existence. All living things possess a nefesh, not just people, but also animals and even plants. The next level of the soul is the ruach. This is the part of the soul that contains emotions, wants, and desires. It's what animates us and drives us to achieve. Finally, there's the highest level, the neshama. This is the part of the human soul that is considered to be divine, a tiny spark of God within each of us. It's the part of our soul that empowers us to have higher cognition, to have free will. The golem in the story certainly looks human and can behave like a human being to a certain degree, but it is not fundamentally human, which raises the question, if it's not a human, what is it? The 19th century Rabbi Yosef Engel comes to the conclusion that what he destroyed was a new category that's neither human, nor animal, nor object. In Judaism, any human being can go through the process of conversion to become Jewish. When we ask whether or not a robot can become Jewish, we're really seeking to define our own humanity. The nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama are the three distinct parts that define us as human beings. It's hard to say whether or not a robot has nefesh, a living existence. It's not made out of organic material, but it certainly moves, it responds to stimuli, it takes in information and uses that information to affect its behavior. In fact, there are a lot of ways in which machines are pushing the boundary between object and living thing. At the other end of the spectrum, robots have an incredible power of reasoning. Advanced neural networks mimic the type of learning and decision-making that happens inside our own brains. In fact, when it comes to measuring human cognition, we have a test for that. It's called the Turing Test, which is essentially a test where a set of judges interact with either a human being or a computer by text message. And if they are unable to distinguish between them, that computer is considered to be so human-like that it possesses human intelligence. In fact, some people believe that the Turing test has already been passed, that there are computer programs so human-like they can be mistaken for human beings. It's predicted that within 15 to 20 years, machines will be able to perform every cognitive task that human beings can do, better than we can. They can reason through situations much the same way that human beings do. They can recognize faces, expressions. Machines are looking more and more human every day. You could make the argument that a robot has two of the three parts of the soul that make us human, that robots possess advanced cognition and even free will. And on the other hand, that robots seem to move and behave like living things. But it's the third part of the soul, the part that contains our desires, our drives, our wants and passions. That's the part of the soul that robots may never have, that exists in the present moment and connects us to our own sense of identity. It's not the part of us that reacts to the universe, but the part that experiences the universe. There may come a day when we consider robots human beings in a legal sense, but even then, they would not be eligible to convert to Judaism. They would likely fall into a third category of being, derived from the anthropomorphic creatures that the ancient rabbis encountered. In terms of the physical bodies of robots, we've now created robots that can walk on two legs and move uncannily like human beings. We've built robots that can imitate human facial expressions and have realistic-looking skin and hair. We've even built robots that demonstrated self-awareness. It's not hard to imagine a world full of robots that are indistinguishable from human beings. There may come a time in the future where a machine can work a job and earn a wage, when robots can think and act independently of their human creators. They may even start their own religions. Judaism will have to adapt, as it always has, to our expanding knowledge of human morality. It's possible that some Jews may eventually accept robots into the fold. However, even if that did happen, it's unlikely that robots would ever have universal acceptance in Judaism. There's simply not enough evidence in Jewish law to support the idea of something man-made being considered human enough to be Jewish. So that's my take. Let me know. What did you like? What did I miss? What questions do you still have? Let me know in the comments down below. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Shalom, I'll see you next time, and keep asking questions.